Welcome back to the Morning Show here on the Rise News. I am Adesoa Omoran.
And I'm Rafai Zeni.
And I'm Toyin Adegbite.
Let's change the conversation at this time. The just concluded G7 summit in Biarritz, France, ended on a happy note for African women.
Oh, yes. In a statement by French President Emmanuel Macron, in conjunction with G7 leaders, approved a $251 million package in support of the African Development Bank's AFOA initiative to support women entrepreneurs in Africa.
The approved package is a direct response to the demand by women to ease access to financing, specifically on the need to establish a financing mechanism for women's economic empowerment, adopted during a summit of African heads of state in 2015 and assigned to the African Development Bank for implementation.
Well, joining us to shed more light on the $251 million approved package for the African women is Toyin Adegbite Moore, Executive Director of Africa Venture Philanthropy Alliance. Many thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Great to have you. Africa is said to have the most female entrepreneurs in the world, yet more than 70% of them are said not to access finance from the traditional banking systems. Why do you think that the G7 got behind this initiative so enthusiastically? How significant is this fund that has been secured?
It's very significant. And I think, again, because we have a lot of women entrepreneurs in Africa and also even mostly in West Africa, about 40%. It's very important to really look at the fact that the G7 and the African Development Bank is really supportive of this initiative. It, again, supports the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and it also helps to, again, drive economic growth that we all need in Africa.
Right. Still speaking about Africa, and I'm probably sure that we all know the drill. I think it was Strife Basiyiwa that was speaking at some point, and he said, you know what? Most of the farmers in Africa, most of the people that grow the crops we eat in Africa are women. They add a mammoth percentage to the economic potential of the continent. But they're still the ones well underrepresented on the money chart in Africa. Most of loan and resource still go to men. The balance is very skewed. In fact, when you look at it, according to some African Union report, you'll see that the funding access to male-dominated companies as regards women-dominated companies is about 3 to 1. Do you think this is enough to tilt the balance?
I think it's a beginning. It's a start in the right direction. And to have this support and this type of money being put against the work for women entrepreneurs is just amazing. I think you've said it, that a lot of what happens, not just in Africa, but in West Africa specifically, are started by women. Women entrepreneurs are leading the charge, from small business all the way to people even on the street hawking. They're mostly women. And so when you think about this money and what it could do, my concern would be to make sure that it gets into the hands of these women, to get them to scale up their businesses, to get their businesses to be sustainable.
How difficult really is it as a woman to get access to funding? I mean, you're executive director of a not-for-profit that pretty much creates that ecosystem of social entrepreneurs and businesses to be able to, mingle and talk about viable prospects and things like that. How difficult is it for women? Because another very big problem is the fact that they don't have those network necessary. I mean, no offense, we've got organizations like WIMBIs doing their own good job, but we don't still have those ecosystems, especially in the male-dominated environment.
And I think, the African Venture Philanthropy Alliance that I represent is an opportunity to create that platform for social investors who, are across all the different sectors and come from different backgrounds, to meet with social entrepreneurs who are mostly women and to meet with social enterprises and social purpose organizations. And I think that's really the value that we bring to the table, to really, again, connect social investors, with social purpose organizations and social enterprises, many of which are led by women.
Can I just say congratulations? I think it's amazing, you know, what's going on here. And I being a woman entrepreneur myself, I'm really excited about this. What is being done, like besides the money that has been gotten, what's being done? What's the regulatory body that has been kind of put aside to monitor the process from the beginning to the end? So now it's being received. How is it going to be disseminated to the women? And how is it going to be regulated as well, so that it doesn't become one of those instances where we have lost account of where the money has gone to?
I think that's where organizations like the World Bank come into place, and also the African Development Bank, that they need to set the regulatory criteria in which this money can now be dispersed to the people that actually need it. So it's very important, and our role as our organization will be to support the direction of the money coming, directly to the end users, and to make sure that people can feel confident that this money will be used in the way that it was intended to use, which is to grow the businesses of these women across Africa.
Well, it is almost like basic mathematics. If you leave majority of your population on the sidelines, you deprive them of economic opportunities. It is just basic and simple that you will not get the economic prowess that you need. And I'm just wondering, because you have interacted with stakeholders at different levels, what are the sticky points here? Why is it so difficult for African women, really? What are the challenges? Rufai talked about the challenges to getting the funds, but I'm looking at the larger society, including government, including organizations. Why do we leave the bulk of the population out of the economic indices?
We have to change our perspective about that. I think part of it has to do with our cultural and traditional roles that women fall into. And I think all of that is changing now that, we're seeing more women really get the support. If they can't get it from your traditional, banks in terms of money that they need to grow their businesses, people are getting support from their families, from their, place of worship and so forth. And now that there's now people are recognizing that women really do bring a lot to any socio-economic and political development of any country. And we need to recognize that and to really key into that. And I think the funding that's now been allocated is a great statement in that right direction, to really kind of, again, recognize that we need to start bringing people from the periphery into the middle, and also helping the low-income communities, which, when you look across West Africa and also in Africa, most of these communities are being taken care of by women.
Sorry if I know you want to jump in here. When I was looking at the profile of your organization, I see that you have relations with similar organizations in Asia and in Europe. I just want you to paint a picture. Is it the same scenario we see across this continent when it comes to female entrepreneurs?
Definitely. I think the European Venture Philanthropy Association and the Asian Venture Philanthropy Network, both are our sister organizations, and both have really kind of taken the leadership, which we are going to follow, around gender lens investing, around making sure that women have access, to capital, and that workplace inequality is reduced. And in the end, when you look at even products and services that are being provided for women and girls, that we want those products and services to improve the lots, the life and their livelihood of women and girls. So very important to look at that.
Right. Another thing comes to mind is the question of how other women too can be part of, forming a coalition to be able to raise money for other women. I mean, part of those that really push for this, and a lot of star power it goes with the likes of Angelique Kidjo, that was in the vanguard, and pretty much this was her work, because she had done a lot of work with her foundation. She called the Batonga Foundation to be able to help the girl child. So she was the one that imprinted on President Macron that you need to do this, and help African women out there. So what can other African women out there that have this same star power do? Because when we see a big funding like this coming into Africa, and we see that it's an African musician that's at the forefront and the vanguard of this, I mean, it speaks volumes.
I think with whom much is given, much is required. And when you are in a position where you can make an impact in people's lives, regardless of where your sector is, whether it's in education, whether it's in oil and gas, whether it's in business, in terms of even we have leading women that are leaders of banks, banking institutions right now, and they are doing incredibly well, and they could be mentors. So I think having Angela Kidjo lead this effort is very outstanding, and I look at that as a message to all of us. We all, no matter where we are, those of us even right now in the as a news channel caster and someone that's here through the media, you can make a difference. You can really, again, challenge people to join the movement, to, again, not just invest in money, but money, time, and know-how. Those three come together. There's finance and non-finance support that women entrepreneurs need. And it's not always about money. It could just be that connection, that network, that mentorship that could be given.
Okay, so just to piggyback on what my colleague said earlier, we're talking about the challenges that women face, and we're talking about the access to funds. However, when I was doing my research earlier, I was thinking about other challenges that women face in regards to even the environment and the legal and regulatory frameworks that are set in place, but really work against women, where they can't go in, and their interest rates are higher, or even kind of having traditional and collateral, like participation in the private sectors. So it's really kind of, the system has already been rigged against women. So how do you plan on kind of taking it down a notch, as opposed to just focusing on, making sure that these women have access to funds? How do we change the system in a way that even when they get these funds, the system works on their behalf?
Absolutely. And a lot of that has to do with, again, leaders in our community that have already broken through this barrier. There's a lot of women entrepreneurs who have made it in all of the different sectors that we have in Nigeria and across Africa. And we need to kind of hold on to them and bring them together in a way that they can, convene and collaborate in terms of policy that we need to now develop to, make things better for women. I think that's one way to go. The other is really, again, looking at what you said, workplace inequality. Employers of labor need to look at their policies and how they are supporting women in the workplace. All of those things are what would help to create a better atmosphere for women in Africa. And for us to, and it's already changing, as you can see. It's just that we haven't seen that, big wave of change, but the change is here, and we all need to jump on. And there are a lot of men as well who support
we'll go for a quick break. We'll come back and we'll talk some more. Keep it locked right here on Rise News Channel.
Well, we're still having in the studios with us Toyin Adegbite Moore. She's the Executive Director of Africa Venture Philanthropy Alliance. Many thanks for staying with us, talking about financing for African women entrepreneurs. We talked about how instrumental Angelique Kidjo was to securing this funding. I find it very ironical and interesting, given the statistics that a lot of African women cannot access finance. But here was this African woman who was able to push for these funds, and it's been secured. But I want to ask you, what more do you know about this fund that has been secured? And in your opinion, how best can it be used? Because over the time, we've seen numerous funds. But when you look at the sectors that they really, really trickle into, some sectors are overlooked. For instance, technology, women in technology.
Good point. And I think very important to understand that a lot of women are now getting into tech. In fact, there are a lot of farmers that are women that are now doing farming online and becoming farmers through connecting with organizations that are now investing in, farming, and they're using technology as a way of doing that by investing in the crops that, the farmers grow. So again, making sure that the money is funneled through the right intermediary is very important. AVPA does not hold anybody's money or serve in that sort of capacity, but I think what our role could be is to ensure that once the money is funneled through the right intermediary, that we provide the finance and the non-finance support for these women entrepreneurs through our social investors. Very important to understand that our social investors are the key people who would like to know who these women entrepreneurs are. And especially in the tech arena, where, again, there are a lot more women that are now being encouraged to go into coding and to really kind of, into engineering and math and, the STEM. And I like to even call it STEAM, to include arts and culture into that arena as well, because women are really, again, beginning to find their creativity through arts and culture and entertainment, as you know.
For me, another question comes to mind about building ecosystems for women. I mean, very viable ecosystems. A big challenge is the fact that we don't have those ecosystems. Ecosystem for women to meet social investors and entrepreneurs in tech, for instance, ecosystem to be able to meet social investors, even in manufacturing. We don't have that ecosystem. Is that what your association will be doing with us?
That would be our role. We will fill in that gap of bringing social investors and investees together from a virtual perspective, and also in terms of what we will call a deal share live platform, where investors can meet with investees and make deals with each other. And so building that women entrepreneur ecosystem is definitely a place that we would work with and grow and look at other other women entrepreneurs that are already in that space. There might be a network already, Wimby's, Whiskars of the world, and bringing them together with other organizations that are focused on women and girl organizations to, again, create that robust ecosystem where investors can now invest in some of the projects that they're working on.
So in building this ecosystem, what is the criteria for, these female entrepreneurs? If, somebody watching this right now and looking like, oh, finally, this is my opportunity to get myself out there, like, where do they even start? How do they start to get involved in this process?
I would say definitely connecting with organizations that are already in existence, like the Wimbys and the Whiskers, that are already here in Nigeria. Very important to connect with them. Whisker, provides mentorship, for instance, for women organizations, and for women to, not just in the workplace, but also those that own their businesses. So very important to connect with some of the organizations that are out there. And then our role as an organization is to maybe look at a convening that will bring together all these women entrepreneurs to participate in a discussion, that focuses on what are some of the challenges that they are facing, what are some of the successes that they've had, and how they can, again, have this cross-fertilization within each other to share ideas and share experiences. I think sometimes what happens is that women don't usually share how they get from A to B. And I think what we're finding more and more is that when we tell our stories, it helps the next person to really kind of even avoid some pitfalls that maybe I went through, that you don't need to go through, because I've already gone through it, and I know that there's another way that we can take.
It's interesting that you're saying that, because there has been that misconception or that argument that women don't support women, and women, you're just saying women don't like to tell their stories. So you're confirming that from what you've said.
To a certain extent. And I think
And I want to segue that even to the conversation about mentorship, women mentoring one another. I mean, we don't have a lot of women in the boardrooms in this country as we speak today. I mean, check through the top 20 banks. How many female CEOs? Not up to 10.
Across all sectors.
Across all sectors, not up to 10. And
Mm.
because we don't have, proper mentorship, pulling people up. In the tech sector, for instance, we only had a prominent woman CEO, and that was the CEO of Omatech of blessed memory. She's late now. That's the only person we had. So how can we change that dynamic? Because it's a scary dynamic, and it's there.
It is. And I think, maybe our organization, in partnership with other organizations like the United Way of Nigeria or, the African Business Council, we need to look at those organizations that have the ear, if you will, or the opportunity to bring people together that are influencers and to really start to train women to be in the boardroom. I think that's a key piece that you've identified, and that's something that would be discussed in our strategy session to look at ways that we can, again, get women ready to be a voice in that situation, because that's very important.
Apart from that, just because we've talked about the challenges the women face in accessing finance, you are all about transformative powers of social investment, engaging and breaching. I wonder what sorts of challenges you have encountered in doing this.
I think the biggest challenge for us would be that we're not a project-based organization. People always want to ask, what exactly is your project? And they're, pleasantly surprised or confused in some ways when we say that it's all the social challenges that happens to be our project. All of it. You name it, we're really trying to make sure that we improve conditions and prospects of people across Africa, and we do that by, again, advancing, social impact through our social investors who want to scale up and invest in social purpose organizations or, nonprofits and social enterprises. And I really believe that social enterprises, those organizations that have that dual, sometimes triple bottom line purpose, are the ones that are going to transform Africa in the next 10 to 15 years. And there are a lot of young people, as you know. Our population is full of vibrant young people who are just energetic and who are also very creative, and they're coming up with some ideas. One of the things that I know we lack, and even as an organization that we're going to try and help to look at, is that data is not always easily accessible. Yeah. So how do we know that we have 40% women entrepreneurs in Nigeria? Well, because BBC says so. Well, is there a way to confirm that? Is there a local organization here in Nigeria that can help us look at data that we can use across all sectors, in the education, in the healthcare, that can tell us how many hospitals do we have, how many doctors do we have in different areas in Nigeria, and so data is important. And
so how many are we in general?
And how many are we? Exactly.
That's another big
So really looking at the importance of data and how data can help to, again, transform communities. And so there's an organization that's trying to do that for the young people, and really trying to look at data in terms of how people spend their money. It's called Reach, and there's an app that they have developed, that's looking at how, no matter what you're doing, there's a way that you can track your money and really try to look at where you're spending and to help you with your money management and your career management as you, transition from your 20s to 30s. So that sort of information is very critical. So looking at data around women entrepreneurs, so that even when this money comes to West Africa, because the money that's been, approved is for all of Africa. So how much of it is coming to West? How much of it is coming to Nigeria? So we need to look at, be ready to really say that maybe Nigeria needs a lot more because we're more in population. And we're talking that there's 40%. Out of that 40%, how many needs a boost? Where are they, in terms of their, the growth of the organization? So those are the things that we're interested in finding out and helping to advance.
As we wrap up, I just wanted us to look at this perspective, really, how the entrepreneurship market will be for women once African Free Trade Act comes on stream. How's it going to be like, briefly, as we wrap up?
I think it's an idea that is, all of these little pieces are going to help to float the boat for women entrepreneurs in West Africa, I would say, and in Africa as a whole. Because when people can now trade easily, that ease of doing business across the continent is really going to help to see communities transformed. Hopefully you can actually see it and document it in the next 3 to 5 years to start seeing some of the impact of this opening up of trade and commerce that's going to happen.
All right, exciting prospect and really exciting conversation here.
Times for women in Africa.
And definitely something that we'll definitely look at very soon and see the possibilities. But it's been a joy having you here, Toyin Adegbite Moore, talking to us about prospect for women in business.